Hi BookTube. I planned on having this video to you a few days ago, but this has been an unexpectedly busy week, and I'm realizing that when you're able to make your own deadline, or when the deadline is kind of flexible, it's best to overshoot. So, for example, if you say that, I'll have this done in a month, and then you end up doing it in 3 weeks, it's like, oh, hey, cool, you got it done early. So I will have the fourth and final Rocket Summer video to you by the 31st, by the end of the month. But anyway, I'm here to talk about Richard Matheson's The Shrinking Man. And don't worry, we will also be talking about this. Because if you have seen this, you know that there is no talking about the book without also talking about the movie. The plot of the novel is very, very simple. You have this married couple out on vacation on a boat in the middle of the ocean, and while the wife is inside the boat for a moment, this strange, spooky mist comes wafting in and passes over the boat, and the husband, who is still outside, is directly exposed to it. And it seems pretty innocuous at first, but then a few months later he starts noticing that his clothes are fitting a little looser. He's losing weight at an unusual rate, and he's not having to look as far down at his wife. He's looking more at her, straight on. And after these kinds of realizations continue to happen, he goes to several doctors and scientists and realizes that he is shrinking. And they're able to figure out that the mist that passed over him was radiated insecticide that deprived his body of carbon, blah blah blah, and is basically making him shrink forever and ever and ever. The novel follows one main bit of action in which the man has now shrunk to less than an inch tall, and he's stuck in the cellar of his home, trying to make his way around, trying to make his way across tables and upstairs, and also throughout this section he is fighting off a black widow spider, which of course to him now is gigantic. They're able to pin down that the man is shrinking at a rate of, I think, 1/7 of an inch per day, and that really adds to the tension by the end, because you realize that this spider that is so terrifying to him when he's 1 inch tall, it's just going to get bigger and badder and scarier as the days go on. So you're urging the guy, like, dude, you have to kill this spider at some point. You just have to face this thing, because eventually you're going to be too weak to do it. And then all throughout this section he's flashing back and thinking about his journey up to this point, starting out as about a 6 foot tall man, and then slowly shrinking down and experiencing all the difficulties that come with that. I've been aware of this story ever since I caught the last half hour or so of the movie on TV when I was a kid, and I've always found it an unusually heart-wrenching story. I mean, for as pulpy as it is, for as much as it's just on paper kind of a silly sci-fi fantasy story, and while the movie is mostly heavy on action, mostly heavy on special effects, the book is much more about the feelings of the main character, and just the endless feelings of humiliation and embarrassment at his condition, and the way that the changing ways in which his family sees him, his wife and his young daughter, the eventual loss of his job, the way that he's being pressured by news outlets to like sell his story to them, and then he eventually does because he's lost his job and he has to make money somehow. The big surprise about the book is that all right, so about half of it is concerned with the action in the cellar, the man versus the spider, and then about a quarter of the book is focused on the practical difficulties of being a shrinking man. Now you're not able to drive, you're not able to get around as fast. You're shrinking, and so sounds are even louder. And then the other quarter of the book is just completely preoccupied with sex. The book doesn't put this completely explicitly, but early on, the man realizes that he is shrinking, and all of him is shrinking. I couldn't help but imagine a Mad Magazine type parody, or I guess these days, a Family Guy parody or something, in my head, in which like a mist passes over a guy, and the mist presents him with two options. It says, all right, we're going to have to shrink you, somewhat. But you're going to have two options. We can either, one, shrink your entire body, or two, we can be a little bit more, narrow in our focus and shrink one particular part of your body. And the man thinks about it, not for very long, and decides, you know what, just go ahead and shrink all of me, and I'll take my chances that someday I'll find a shrinking woman that's about my size. Although the sex scenes in the book are written in that 1950s pulpy style of, we yielded to the desires of our bodies, and our mouths stopped speaking, but our flesh began to speak a language of its own. That whole part of the plot could easily devolve into unintentional humor. Matheson does such a good job of putting you in this character's head that you feel for him. You understand everything that he's going through. I feel comfortable talking about the movie too because the screenplay is also written by Richard Matheson. And he makes a couple of really smart choices when it comes to this adaptation. Because, for one thing, he switches up the structure. Here in the movie, it's just a chronological story. The mist comes over the man, and then from that point on, it's just him slowly shrinking. And that works better on film, I think, because it's so visual. You're seeing him shrink sometimes from one scene to the next. Whereas in the book, it makes more sense to put you in the main character's head and have him, flashing back to past events. Also, the movie does cut down on sex as a concern of the man, which is a smart decision, I think, because in the 1950s, I don't think American movies were ready to give you, a sensitive portrait of the sexual frustrations of a shrinking man just yet. I'm not sure the movies are still yet ready to do that. But, this movie is just, it's one of the very best science fiction movies of its era. And when people might try to tell you, like, oh, science fiction movies, they really didn't get good until 2001, a Space Odyssey. Before that, like, they had their charms, but they were mostly kind of silly. Show them The Incredible Shrinking Man, and Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and Forbidden Planet, and some other stuff, but mainly The Incredible Shrinking Man. This is one of the best special effects driven movies, one of the best man against nature movies there's ever been. And the ending of this movie, if you know, you know, because if you have seen the ending of this movie, especially if you've seen the ending when you were a kid, like I did, you have never forgotten it. it's basically the same ending as the book, where the character, I mean, I'm not going to spoil it, but the character reaches an epiphany, and it winds up being a really oddly comforting, notion of the universe and existence and God that you were just not expecting from a pulp science fiction story. And it's well done in the book, but it is just beautifully done in the movie. In short, what I'm trying to say is, the movie is aptly titled, because the book, The Shrinking Man, is very, very good. It's a really cool premise that is milked for all the psychological drama and intrigue that it's worth. But the movie is incredible. All right, so that is book 3 of Rocket Summer, our 1950s choice. And in 1 week, at the latest, I will bring you Nova by Samuel Delany to round out this booktube event. So thank you for watching.